Okay, so ready to dive into Emerald Wonderland with me?
Absolutely. I'm ready for another trip down the rabbit hole. Where are we starting this time?
Well, this fictional podcast is a wild ride from the get-go. But this episode in particular takes us on a journey through some seriously imaginative territory, even for a story that already has us following Dorothy down the yellow brick road.
Yeah, and let's be honest, Emerald Wonderland doesn't shy away from throwing in curveballs, does it?
Not at all. And this time, the curveball comes in the form of a certain girl who's just wandered in from Neverland.
Oh, you mean Wendy Darling. Talk about a crossover episode for the ages.
Right. I mean, Dorothy and Wendy. Together. It's like the ultimate mashup of childhood dreams. They're both such icons in their own right.
And what's brilliant is how seamlessly the podcast weaves together these different worlds. Suddenly, you've got flying monkeys rubbing shoulders with lost boys, and it just works.
Absolutely. It's like anything goes in Emerald Wonderland, but in a way that feels both surprising and strangely inevitable.
Exactly. Like it was meant to be.
Okay, so picture this. Dorothy and her crew just had this crazy showdown with the Caterpillar Queen.
Oh, yeah, the Caterpillar Queen. Now that was a scene.
Intense, right? Anyway, they're trekking down the yellow brick road, catching their breath, when, bam! Who drops in but Wendy Darling herself?
Talk about an entrance.
Seriously. But she's not just there for a social call. She's got some news. Some seriously unsettling news.
And this is where we meet Croco Stiltskin, right?
Now, you know Croco Stillskin.
How can you not? Talk about a villain for the ages. He's like Captain Hook and Rumpelstiltskin rolled into one seriously intimidating package.
Right. He's got the hook, he's got the riddles, and he's got a bone to pick with our heroes.
He definitely brings the drama, doesn't he?
But here's the thing. He's not even the biggest bad in this story.
Wait, it gets worse.
Oh, yeah. Croco Stillskin is more like a messenger. He's here to deliver some seriously bad news about the real villain of the story.
The Shadow Weaver.
You got it.
Yeah.
And trust me, she's not your average fairy tale villain.
What do you mean?
Well, we've all heard about villains who want to take over the world, right? But the Shadow Weaver, she's after something far more insidious. Control over every story, every single voice. She wants to silence anyone who dares to challenge her.
So it's not just about good versus evil, it's about who gets to tell the story.
Exactly. And what happens when those stories are silenced?
That's a chilling thought.
It is. And it's something our heroes have to confront head on. And just when you think things couldn't get any stranger, our heroes stumble upon a literal fork in the yellow brick road. One path leads to, well, who knows what, but the other.
Oh, this is where it gets good.
It's a direct line to Mermaid Land.
You can't make this stuff up.
Well, in Emerald Wonderland, anything is possible, right?
True, true. But this isn't just a whimsical detour, is it? It feels like there's something more going on here.
You're right. Remember how the Shadow Weaver is all about silencing voices? Well, Mermaid Land is the perfect place to explore that theme, don't you think?
Because it's underwater, and everyone has to communicate without speaking.
Exactly. But it's more than just a lack of verbal communication. The Little Mermaid herself has a warning for our heroes.
Oh, what does she have to say?
Well, that's the thing. She delivers her warning in complete silence.
No way. How can she warn them if she can't talk?
That's the challenge, isn't it? They have to figure out what she's trying to tell them using only gestures and facial expressions.
Talk about pressure. Imagine trying to decipher a life or death message without any words.
It's a good thing our heroes are quick learners, right?
So they managed to escape the silent doom of Mermaid Land.
They do, but their troubles are far from over.
What happens next?
They run into another iconic figure, the Pied Piper.
Oh no, not the Pied Piper.
But this isn't your grandma's Pied Piper. Oh no. This one's got a siren song that's both enchanting and terrifying.
So what happens? Do they get lured in by the music?
It's a close call, but Alice still has that temporal ticker handy.
Phew, that was close. That thing is a lifesaver, literally. But where do they end up after escaping the Pied Siren?
They land in a place called the Forest of Echoes.
The Forest of Echoes. Never heard of it. What's it like?
Well, imagine the creepiest, most unsettling forest you can think of. It's a place where the trees whisper secrets and the shadows seem to have a life of their own.
It sounds terrifying, but I bet our heroes can handle it.
They're tougher than they look. And they're going to need all their strength and courage to face what's coming next. Because guess who's waiting for them in the Forest of Echoes?
Oh no, don't tell me it.
The Shadow Weaver herself.
I knew it! This is getting good.
Yeah.
So, how do they defeat her?
Well, it's not exactly a straightforward battle. You see, the Shadow Weaver, she's not your typical villain. She's smart, she's manipulative, and she knows exactly how to exploit each hero's weaknesses.
What do you mean?
For example, she targets Wendy's desire to be a strong, independent woman.
Oh, so she tries to turn Wendy against her friends.
Not exactly. She tries to convince Wendy that her role as a caretaker isn't heroic enough, that she's destined for greater things.
That's pretty devious.
It is, and it almost works. But Wendy, she's wiser than she looks. She sees through the Shadow Weaver's manipulation and chooses her own path.
Good for Wendy. What about the others? How do they handle the Shadow Weaver's mind games?
They each face their own battles, their own temptations.
But they make it through, though, right? They don't succumb to the Shadow Weaver's tricks.
They find their way, eventually, but it's not easy.
So what happens next? Where do they go after the Forest of Echoes?
Well, picture this.
Okay.
Imagine a garden, but not just any garden.
Uh-huh.
This garden's bursting with colors, with flowers that sing and butterflies with stained glass wings. It's like stepping into a dream.
That sounds incredible.
It's called the Field of Wonder, and it's like a breath of fresh air after the darkness of the Forest of Echoes.
So it's a happy place, a place of pure imagination.
Absolutely. It's where Emerald Wonderland really reminds us of the power of stories, of the magic that happens when we let our imaginations run wild.
But it's more than just a pretty backdrop, right? There's got to be more to it than that.
You're right, there's a warning that comes with the Field of Wonder.
A warning? What kind of warning?
It's a reminder that sometimes the most beautiful things can also be the most dangerous. You can get so caught up in the wonder of it all that you forget about the real world, about the things that matter.
So it's about balance, right? Finding that balance between imagination and reality.
Exactly. And our heroes, they learn that lesson the hard way. They encounter souls who have been trapped in the Field of Wonder, so enchanted by the beauty of it all that they've forgotten who they are.
Oh, wow. That's both beautiful and kind of tragic.
It is, isn't it? But it's a reminder that we can't escape into stories completely.
No matter how tempting it might be.
Exactly. But even though they leave the Field of Wonder, they don't leave empty-handed. They're gifted with these beautiful crystals.
Crystals? What kind of crystals?
They're like little pieces of the Field of Wonder itself, infused with magic and wonder.
So they're like souvenirs, reminders of the magic they experience.
Exactly. And trust me, they're going to need all the magic they can get, because the path ahead is about to get a whole lot darker.
What do you mean?
Imagine a narrow, twisting corridor where the very shadows have vanished.
No shadows! How is that even possible?
It's the Shadow Weaver's doing, of course. She's not just trying to control stories, she's trying to erase individuality, to make everyone and everything the same.
That's terrifying. But our heroes, they're not going to let her get away with it, are they?
They're ready to fight back, but it's not going to be easy. They're going to have to face their fears, their doubts, and ultimately themselves.
And their breaths.
Oh yeah, things are about to get really interesting.
Okay, now you have to explain.
As they get closer to the Shadow Weaver's lair, their very breaths start to reflect their emotions in these vibrant colors.
Wait, really? Their breaths?
It's like their inner turmoil, their fears and anxieties are spilling out into the open for everyone to see.
It's like a physical manifestation of their emotional states.
And it's a reminder that our emotions, even the difficult ones, are a part of who we are. They make us human.
This whole podcast is like a giant metaphor, isn't it?
You could say that. But anyway, back to the story. Our heroes finally reach the Shadow Weaver's lair, this imposing Gothic castle that looks like it's straight out of a nightmare.
And what do? Do they storm the castle?
They come up with a plan.
Okay.
They decide to use a little drink me potion to shrink themselves down to miniature size.
Oh, I get it. So they can sneak into the castle undetected. It's like, honey, I shrunk the kids, but with a fairy tale twist.
Exactly. And it's not all fun and games, let me tell you. Imagine dodging giant spiders, swinging from cobwebs, all while carrying this eat-me cake that's their only hope of defeating the Shadow Weaver.
The eat-me cake? What's so special about it?
It's the antidote to the Shadow Weaver's magic. Once they eat it, they'll grow back to their normal size and be strong enough to defeat her.
Wow. So it's a race against time? They have to eat the cake before the Shadow Weaver catches them?
The tension is real, but they manage to pull it off, of course. They reach the Shadow Weaver's chamber, things get a little dicey, but they eat the cake, grow back to their normal size, and finally defeat the Shadow Weaver once and for all.
Yes. I knew they could do it. But what happens to the Shadow Weaver? Is she gone for good?
With the Shadow Weaver gone, balance is restored. Shadows return, colors are even more vibrant, and our heroes are victorious.
It's such a satisfying ending. But more importantly, What a powerful message Emerald Wonderland leaves us with, right?
It's a story about the power of stories, the importance of finding your voice, and the magic that happens when we embrace our imaginations.
It's a reminder that even in the darkest of times, there's always hope, always wonder to be found, as long as we're brave enough to look for it.
And that's what makes this deep dive so rewarding, don't you think?
Absolutely. It reminds us that even though these stories might be fictional, the messages they carry are very real, very relevant to our own lives.
So the next time you feel a little lost, a little uncertain, remember the message of Emerald Wonderland.
Embrace the unknown, speak your truth, and never underestimate the power of a good story.
And never be afraid to go on an adventure, even if it takes you down a rabbit hole or two.